Welcome back, everybody. You got Will and I-Man here from the Block Runner, MetaZone, Rovi, and MScribe, and today we're going to be talking about some more bitmaps.
Yes, dude. Let's do it. Let's talk bitmap.
We're going back home, dude.
What do you mean going back, dude? We never left, or did we? I don't know.
They say we left, and so I'm going to play along.
Yeah, we're going back.
We're going home.
It's calling us back, dude. Like a beacon from like a UFO, right? It's just
sure, or a spotlight, or
whatever, dude. We're being pulled back to bitmap, right? For good reason, because bitmap, it is still the top contender for the metaverse on Bitcoin. Like just in general,
foundation,
foundation, initiative, ecosystem, whatever. Mm-hmm. So far, nothing comes even close.
Correct.
At all, right? And if you think, DeFi on Bitcoin, shit coins on Bitcoin, shit JPEGs on Bitcoin, all this stuff is important. I mean, I feel like finding the infrastructure foundation roots for a future multi-trillion-dollar economy on Bitcoin is a pretty damn big deal.
Yeah, we spent a few minutes chatting with AI about
as we do
a metaverse operating system.
Yeah, we did,
and it was interesting, kind of like the write-up, because they talked about all the old school kind of metaverses, the original.
Yeah, I mean, just this metaverse thing, it's going to happen in phases, right? Phase one was like these, Ethereum primitive metaverses. Not necessarily primitive. They were still very...
It's like early attempts at the metaverse.
Yeah, So we had, Decentraland, CryptoVoxel, Sandbox, and others, right? Sprinkle in HyperFi, Somnium, and others. These are attempts at establishing some sense of like an open protocol for a metaverse ecosystem, right? Where you introduce some sort of tool, some open source framework where people can come in and start creating shit.
Yeah, correct.
In like this shared virtual space. So
yeah, we were in a Twitter space not too long ago, and they asked us, like, what do you think is the problem with like the previous metaverses that Bitmap solves? That was such a good question, because there wasn't really so much of a problem with old metaverses or the other metaverses. It was just more of we needed a mechanism to enable creators and developers to build out what they see as a metaverse. Because previous to Bitmap, we had a handful of attempts, right?
Correct.
And so now with Bitmap, now anybody can build out whatever they think the metaverse should be.
Yeah.
Right. And so that is where the value is.
100%. Yeah. Basically, ecosystem cohesive alignment, I guess. Right.
Yeah.
And Bitmap representing like the most I don't know, like a foundational approach, in other words, and like as open as it gets. Right. It was completely organic, grassroots. There was no like team, none of that stuff that you typically see whenever like a metaverse emerges, like some group or some individuals, like,
Yeah, but you know what? That comes with consequences, right? If there's no team, then there's no there's no force to continue putting effort.
Well, the force is the community.
It's
right?
a community. That's the consequence, is that if without that team, that means the community has to step up and build stuff.
Which is always challenging, right? And that is like the whole experiment of Web3, I think, in general. Just like that's the killer app that we're all kind of like collectively trying to prove, is it actually even viable?
Yeah.
Can you rely on like distributed ecosystems that have proper incentive alignments to actually result in some like actual tangible value production?
I just thought of an idea that I'll have to tell you after.
Okay, I'm all ears, dude. Excited to hear this idea. But Bitmap is a perfect representation of like, it's as Web3 as the metaverse can get, right? It falls in line with that ethos and that experimentation that like all of crypto is like chasing after, but directed towards value production specifically for the metaverse space.
Yeah,
right.
That's such a good point, because we've seen a number of PFP projects call themselves like communities, and like the community doesn't really do anything, right?
Other than like, make merch and like throw parties and and like, do like shoeies or whatever the fucking chug booze out of their, undergarments and such. It's like the extent of community contribution in the PFP world, right?
Yeah.
Right, yeah. So, but that's largely a lack of direction. That's why.
Yeah, there's nothing to do. But with Bitmap, there's a lot to do.
There is quite the task at hand, guys.
There's so much to do. We're talking about a potential $1 trillion ecosystem at our hands here.
Yeah,
and we have to do work.
Serious work.
A lot of work. I can't overstate how much work is required to do this.
Yeah, it is a lot of work. So, and people Unfortunately, minds are fickle, right? And people are lazy, and people largely just don't.
It's
have,
the opposite of what we need is
Yeah,
like effort and
Yeah.
due diligence. And
yeah, exactly. That's why they call this an experiment, right? And it's so tough and challenged. But if you get that incentive alignment right,
yeah,
that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, so you can't depend on things like DAOs and like self-organization among distributed human ecosystems. That's I use that word specifically.
Yeah,
I feel like you can't achieve real Taoism
because a human
AI.
is self-interested.
Exactly.
And you need a token
A real incentive.
to battle that incentive mechanism
Exactly.
for the good of the ecosystem.
Yeah, as long as like self-interest is still like prevalent as like the prevalent force for actual execution of action, and like the ecosystem as a whole benefits from that, then you're on to something.
I remember reading that tweet that you sent this morning.
Yeah,
about
it's out there. It's out there. It's a great fucking sum up of like what this whole thing is about.
Yeah, I
right?
totally agree. I mean,
it really is.
It really is just that.
Pretty much. So that's what we're doing here. So
Yeah.
let's see how we're chugging along so far.
All right, so let's take a look at the metrics. Bitmap.community here. Number is going up, dude.
Finally.
Owners are going up.
I thought it was over.
So
Because we got to like 33 or 34K, and then like suddenly we were like sub 30K.
yeah.
You know, but those were bitmaps being locked up in Merlin seal. So I think the lockening is now like the unlockening.
Yeah.
So some bitmaps are coming back to their owners, right?
They're coming back home, dude.
Coming back home. It's a homecoming event.
Yeah. All right. And so the price is about $142.
Yeah.
And I thought this was interesting. The listings, I never really looked at this number, but when you add these up, it's about 4% of like people total bitmaps listed. Like that's nothing.
It is nothing. That's what you call conviction in an ecosystem, dude.
Yeah.
People know these fucking things have value. You know, they're holding on with the dire grip.
Yeah.
So that's good signs. Good signs.
All right. So we're looking at squiggly lines. Lines go up and sometimes they go down.
They've been going down a lot lately, so people have been freaking the fuck out. Speaking of fickle minds, it's like, yeah, it's all over, and it's basically the block runner's fault.
Yeah.
We've been seeing a lot of those tweets. It's really our fault, like why this experiment completely fell over, right?
I mean, it was only us who made the number go up, and it is us that makes number go down.
From virtually zero. Yeah, so our bad, guys. Our bad. Sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's move past this price. And again, obviously we don't give a rat's patoot, a rat's boot.
Yeah.
A rat's ass. We don't care, dude. We don't care about squiggly lines that much.
Yeah.
Right? Because we know, like, this wasn't like some 6-month initiative.
Correct.
Or like, this Metaverse shit, we're locked in for like a decade or two. We already know that. So, who cares about price? Yeah, good luck, dude.
All right.
Good luck staying sane for that long.
All right. Speaking about productivity, Bitoshi comes out here and he says, today is even a special lure day.
Special lure.
And welcome to Atlas, a blockchain explorer in every way imaginable.
Nice.
So if you click on this ordinal inscription, it takes you to this nice looking kind of like interface. And
so I see blocks. Looks like mempool, except
except it's not.
Yeah, it's not. It doesn't have like that mempool look and feel to it. But essentially it's fulfilling, it's not tracking like inputs and outputs of like transactions in real time. All it is displaying like block data, right?
Yeah. So they're pulling information from ordinals.com, and they're pulling all the information that ordinals.com has from block data. So if you look at this list here, this is only like the block header information. It does not include like all the transaction data, but it does include transaction count. So
interesting.
So yeah, all this is like officially made into an inscription, and now you can basically download the JSON and extract this data.
Yeah, and apply it however you see fit, basically, right? Now it's just like an easy, accessible, I guess, point of extraction of fetching. Like, fetch me this information so I could use it in whatever application I needed, right?
Yeah, it's cool because we use the same sort of technology to allow creators to make UNAT art with block data. So this is the block data that they're using.
Correct.
Yeah. So
all that can be retrieved from these scripts that these artists are deploying, right?
Correct.
On chain, like the script of the Inscription itself, if you wanted to render some image that's dependent on like the nonce value, for instance,
Yeah, that's
like
right.
that's what's going to determine its propagation of traits. You could do that.
That's right.
And it's pulling from this same bucket of information. So that is cool. That is pretty much what DMT is.
Yeah.
So yeah, Bitoshi's been cooking, dude. This is like back-to-back videos where Bitoshi's put something out. So
Yeah.
it's about time, dude.
Yeah.
We're getting some contribution from like all angles. So.
Yeah.
Speaking of contribution,
Inscribe.space, yeah. So they are teasing an announcement here, and we're lucky because the announcement has happened.
And for whatever reason, we're like right
Yeah.
there, dude.
Yeah.
That's us.
Is that us?
That's definitely us. And I think that's us on display, a video display specifically,
Yeah.
in the virtual environment that Inscribe.space is deploying. So that's pretty cool. It looks very familiar to us. There was a point in time
Yeah.
where we spent most of our days like on video screens in Decentraland.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Streaming our talks with our communities and such. And yeah, this is very much a staple of like metaverse activity. Right?
Yeah, it's cool because you could sit there and watch on YouTube, like a live stream, and it's like you're chatting with people, and
which
it's like,
most of y'all are doing.
Yeah. But if you were to do this live within the metaverse, now
It's
you
so
can
much
actually
better.
see each other and like interact with the environment and all that stuff.
Yeah, so you might ask, like, interact with what? Huh? What do you mean interact? So we're gonna talk about that later.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we have this grand vision of what we expect the metaverse experience to be. But yeah, that is definitely a component of it. These streaming devices, right? And that's an example of a real in metaverse application, right?
Yeah, and I feel like this is where everything's gonna go. Like Twitter Spaces, live streams, all that's going to be happening in a 3D environment just because it's way more entertaining.
Yeah, a lot of you guys haven't experienced that yet. Unless you were like Decentraland natives or,
I feel like anybody,
Metaverse.
a lot of people in Bitmap haven't been exposed to.
That's what I mean.
Metaverse.
Well, they haven't hit that eureka, like aha moment. Remember like when we were in Decentraland and we were watching the SpaceX launch through a streaming device just like that in Decentraland. It was a nice scene. They had like bleachers set up and, community was all huddled around watching this historic moment.
Yeah.
And we're like in complete awe. I was like, man, but we could have been watching this on Twitch. Why do we have to do this in Decentraland? And then all of a sudden, like the ground starts to rumble and like you're like, what the fuck? And then like literally the ground splits and like a rocket just slowly emerges, flies into the infinite space of metaverse space.
Yeah. As in the background, the screen was an actual rocket launch.
Yeah, it was timed perfectly.
And in the foreground, right under our feet, the rocket was actually launching.
Yeah, it was like a replica. It was awesome. And we were like, holy shit. So that recording is somewhere on our channel.
It is.
Like some article like published it even because it was like one of those groundbreaking. This is around the time where like Fortnite was doing their fucking Travis Scott stuff. It's like this is when people were starting to like, those eureka moments. Like, damn, this is some shit you just can't get anywhere else on the internet.
Yeah, correct.
So yeah,
all right.
Bitmap will get there. I promise.
Arjun, another tweet here. It says Bitmapception is now live.
Yeah.
Funding. So ownership benefits. So just going into the detail of like basically the art that's being generated here from Bitmap.
Yeah, we've seen this project in the works since like the beginning days of Bitmap. So
man, it's like early days, like pre-blockout days.
Correct. So there's some sort of technology here that's been like developed over time. So we've always been curious to see like, what is this going to like turn into?
Mm-hmm.
So here it is. It's like quite the spectacle. It reminds me a lot like when we first were talking about Bitmap and we looked at Cardano's like IOHKs.
Mm-hmm. Symphony of like block data.
Yeah, pretty much. It was like a really cool visualization, like standard, I guess, of block data.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like the very early days. It got us thinking about DMT. It's like, shit, man, you could really manifest almost anything.
Yeah.
With block data.
Yeah.
And like what they did was beautiful. It had like sound that was non-arbitrarily generated. It was like, fuck, this is cool, right? So then we're heading that direction. People are getting it. Dude.
Yeah, this is cool.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. So there's some feathers being ruffled.
Oh man, here we go again. Ruffling feathers, you say?
All right, so oceans.bitmap. I think these are the B Meta guys, and they're just looking at BRC420 and they're saying, hey, you know what? This website hasn't really changed much since the drop. It's like, what's going on here? And they basically signaled the infantry.
That's us. We're in this list.
Oh yeah, there we are.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, we need to address this as a community.
Yeah, I think in general, just to sum it up, like, you know, it's just the community sentiment. Yeah, price go down, so it's like,
why?
First of all, why is that happening, right?
I mean,
let's identify, like, you know, what's changed from the times where price go up, where price were going up, right? Well, during those price go up days, is like, you know, Jeff and previously known as Recursive IO, Bitmap.tech, you know, they were like all in, you know, pumping out new BRC420 like protocol updates and like, you know, the marketplace, and, you know, people were deploying these assets, they were selling out and stuff. It was, you know, it was vibrant. It seemed like things were on the right path.
Yeah.
And then, you know, layer 2 happens. It's like now we're all about Merlin, and then guess what? Price start going down. So it's like, fuck.
It's like, yeah.
I guess it's his fault, right? So it's like, here's the call. Here's the masses like, dude, come back. Refocus your attention on us, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that?
I feel like I don't know. I think the contributors here are trying to contribute. Like Jeff, he's trying to contribute, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he did BRC420. He's doing Merlin, and he's out there like cooking stuff. And
yeah, I think
you can only focus on one thing at a time, right? So
this is a classic example of, and we're victim of this ourselves, is spreading yourself thin, right? And when you try to take on too many initiatives simultaneously, you know, something is going to get left in the backlog.
It always does.
Yeah, like, but when you're like a developer, you know, sometimes you just can't help yourself, dude. You just want to like work on everything.
Yeah,
right? And so yeah, Jeff and his team is like, yeah, L2 obviously is going to be a big thing on Bitcoin, just like the Metaverse is, and like DeFi and all these things. So like, he literally has his hands in all these buckets, right?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't include this one tweet, but they were talking about the number of participants in ordinals right now. It's like daily participants, like 15,000 or something like that.
Okay.
And we were early in NFTs in 2019, and it was about the same.
Felt like it.
And then all of a sudden, if you were persistent and consistent, you would have seen the $60 billion inflows of money for NFTs.
Correct. Yeah. If you would have like looked at those early day metrics and been like, dude, this is like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
Which we had those feelings.
We
like,
asked ourselves that every week during the podcast.
During the NFT era?
During the NFT area.
Yeah. We're like, literally, like, we used to have like community calls in decentralized. Like, it's like, guys, there's only like 6 of us in here. You know? It's like, why are we doing this? Right.
Yeah.
Where does our conviction even come from? Like, are people going to give a fuck eventually?
Yeah.
I remember those talks.
Yeah.
And eventually.
And then it took two years after that. And then
people really gave a fuck.
That was $60 billion worth of volume in the entire NFT space.
Yeah, it was wild. So likely something like that will occur this time as well. It's not so obvious where that liquidity is going to go. But yeah, we're suspecting a lot of it will be like funneled into ordinals and Bitmap ecosystem. And
yeah, and that's when all of a sudden everybody's going to be working on Bitmap.
Correct. Yeah, so remember these days, lads.
Yeah. Whenever
things like are tough like they are right now, you know, who's still around, who's still building, like, don't forget that, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, here's some more people.
Yeah, so Jeff chimes in and says, thank you for this. We support BRC420 still, and we keep supporting BRC420. In fact, we spent the last 2 months upgrading the protocol, and
in the next 10 days, basically something is coming, you know. So he's addressing the pandemonium face on, right? He's like, we didn't abandon you guys, you know, we're gonna come out with something pretty soon. So definitely keeping our eyes out for that. Let's see.
His objective hasn't changed, is make Bitcoin fun again.
Yeah, I mean, the metaverse is pretty fun, ain't it?
Yeah.
It's pretty fucking fun. Some fun times we had back in, you know. Do you agree?
I guess.
God damn it, dude. I love your spice, dude. Your spice of life. It's insane. It's infectious.
All right. Well, you're dropping some spice here. So the Bitmap content storm is coming.
It is.
Deployability and functionality are critical facets for user retention. Nobody wants to join a virtual environment with a bunch of static, do-nothing buildings and statues. Bitmap developers know this, and if they don't, they will follow our lead once BitmapOS launches.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is nothing new. We've been saying this for years.
Yeah.
Seriously. Because we've been witness to it all, and we just kept seeing all these different metaverse builders come in and like just keep continue to like perpetuate like the same static do nothingness environment. It's like, fuck.
Yeah.
Like, what are they doing? Like, you know, but we understand this is how markets happen. Whenever like trends emerge, people pile on and rush in just to build anything. Yeah, build anything, and then they're going to use that to like pitch to investors. Like, see, look, I could build stuff.
Yeah.
You know, fund me. That's shit happens.
Yeah, we're the first plant in the metaverse.
Whatever, dude. But we always knew it's like this shit isn't going to work unless this metaverse layer is as robust and as interesting as
think
the
of an internet website, right?
Mhm.
In the early days in the 90s, you needed a developer to build a website, right? You needed to know how to code.
Yeah.
Right. And so we're at that moment right now for the metaverse. Like, we need to know how to code to make stuff in the metaverse for now.
I agree. Yeah, and there's a lot of emphasis on like no code builder tools and stuff like that, which I get it.
Yeah, which is cool, but you cannot do retention, functionality with no code builders.
Yeah, you have to leave the canvas basically as open as possible, and then give the developers the right tools to construct things with real substance and value, right? Where you can actually build DeFi applications in the metaverse and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever else like these developers can conjure up in their minds, right? If they have this technical skills, creativity, the vision, the ambition, all these things, and of course, if the indicators of a market are present within this space, they're going to come and they're going to execute and deploy all that talent and produce value for us, right?
It's so intuitive, dude.
But then again, we're living in the AI age, dude, you know?
Yeah, man, that AI stuff is cool. I mean, like I said, when I said we were chatting with AI, we were literally conversating with voice.
Correct. We were. So this AI stuff, I think, is definitely going to help a lot in the in this process. So
yeah.
As far as BitmapOS goes, we hear you guys. You know, you creators out there want more support.
Yeah.
You want to build. You want your stuff to be deployed.
Yeah.
And you want your bitmap owners want this stuff as well. They want their bitmaps to like be usable and functional and useful and impactful. And then we want the rest of the world to see this shit and like FOMO in, right? That's the whole point. It's like you guys are over there flipping JPEGs, you know, locking and unlocking and relocking until like infinity and spinning up like the 50 second synthetic derivative of like my Bitcoin.
Yeah.
You know, that's definitely sustainable.
Yeah.
But the metaverse right now doesn't have anything to like really flex in comparison.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's a lot of work to be done, and we need some sort of like degree of financialization of a bitmap, but also a degree of retention, interactability, like ecosystem foundational like components, like building stuff.
It's actually
selling
tremendous
stuff.
You're gonna keep going like forever.
Yeah, man.
We're talking about like an actual. I don't know.
It's a world.
Yeah. So I mean, we're contemplating conjuring up maybe like a white paper for this BitmapOS release or something, because I feel like just releasing a stack isn't enough. I think the stack needs to come with context and purpose.
It needs a direction. You know,
Exactly.
We need a beacon of like hope.
Yeah, and we need a call to action for developers to contribute.
Right. That's right.
Fuck, more work to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, lads. So we're with you. But yeah, don't worry. It's gonna evolve.
Yeah. All right, guys. That's it for Bitmap. Let us know if we missed anything. I know there's a lot of stuff happening out there. If you see anything that we should take a look at, let us know in the comment section below. Appreciate you for watching, and we will catch you in the next video.
Peace.